Okay, I'd like to call to order the April 7th, 2021 special board meeting of the Stowe Monroe Falls Board of Education. It is now 7 p.m. Roll call, please.
Jason Whitaker.
Here.
Jerry Bedio.
Here.
Lisa Johnson Bowers.
Here.
Nancy Brown.
Here.
Jessica Wright.
Here. Will all please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. First order of business is we do need to amend the agenda prior to adopting the agenda for this evening. Can I have a motion to amend the agenda to change item number 4 from discussion to the consideration and possible approval of the proposed contracts with the Summit County Board of Education regarding the May 4th, 2021 primary?
Board of Elections.
What did I say? Board of Education? My apologies. I wrote BOE. So, Board of Elections.
Second.
Any discussion on that amendment? Okay, roll call, please.
Whitaker.
Aye.
Bedio.
Aye.
Johnson Bowers. Brown.
Aye.
Wright.
Aye.
Agenda as amended.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to the adoption of the amended agenda. Do I have a motion?
Second.
And roll call when you get there.
Bedio.
Aye.
Johnson Bowers. Brown.
Aye.
Whitaker.
Aye.
Wright.
Aye.
Approved.
All right, so moving on to that consideration and possible approval, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Bratton.
Thank you. What day was it that we spoke with them on?
Friday.
Friday, Mrs. Wright and I met by Zoom with the Board of Elections. There are some representatives from there, including their legal counsel. Mrs. Carroll, our legal counsel, was there as well. We discussed the 3 buildings that are still being in use and trying to find alternative sites. We got Mr. Love, principal at Kempton, as well as Mr. Albrecht, principal at Echo Hills, and Mrs. Muckleroy, principal at Woodland, on the phone to see if there was any other alternative ways that we could do this that would be acceptable to the Board of Elections, including a tent, outside facilities, and whatnot. They were very nice. They were very amenable. But to say any movement was made was 0 for 2 on Kempton as well as Woodland, simply because there was one idea to change the location for Echo Hills, enter the side of the building, and use the media center, the library there, as it is a separate entrance exit. We would clean everything out of there, et cetera. There's about 4 bookshelves in there, however, that are in there as originals, bolted to the floor. If you take them out, that type of thing, it's going to break up all the flooring, which is terrazzo, which is, if you know, understand what underneath terrazzo is, asbestos, and, off we go. Not only to mention having to remove every book from all the bookshelves in that library. That was not amenable. We took them in, and I met with them Tuesday morning to take them around to the media center. They did a bunch of measurements. It was very optimistic. I felt very good about it. I thought it was going to be a very positive thing, and the experience was positive. But I spoke with Lance Reed last night, and then again this morning, who said basically what they do is they take all those measurements back, throw them in a blueprint program, if you will, that is set up with the dimensions that are required by the Board of Elections. Our dimensions for the media center do not fit in those. Asked if there was any way we could move those bookshelves, to which I told them, no, not without causing destruction to our property and, other potential issues. He basically said, unfortunately, then our offer of the media center does not work for their blueprints and their drawings. To which I told him, thank you, and told him I would let the board know this evening of what their decision was. I was very optimistic, like I said, going in. I thought it was very good. I thought it was a great plan. And I think with the amount of people that are going to be going in there and voting, it was more than enough. But they said that they have to plan it as if it was a regular election under regular circumstances and didn't have any wiggle room on that piece, which I courteously, respectfully disagreed and told him, I said, you know, what's a shame is we're going to be displacing our students and causing potential safety issues in a situation where it's just not necessary to do so. He said, I understand your frustration, but this is basically all I can do at this time. That was the end of the conversation, and now I'm reporting that to you this evening.
Yeah, and I know the tent issue was one of the larger discussion topics of our last meeting was, could this be a possibility? They had a number of logistical reasons as to why. I mean, even I think Tom and I even kind of ruled it out as an option after hearing all of the issues, and then specifically with having them in the parking lot due to ADA, we wouldn't be able to have them in a grassed area, for example, and then having them in the parking lots that are already
Jam-packed.
during the school
Yeah.
day.
And they would need to get in there at 3 o'clock to set up, et cetera. And, you know, they'd need electric and they'd need
Yeah,
XYZ and they'd need lighting and
High need of electricity plus lighting.
lighting and,
Yeah.
yeah. And then it would take over part of the parking lot, which is obviously very small to begin with and being used by all of our patrons as it is.
And the need would be for full coverage type tent in the case of bad weather. And depending on how the grading of where we are, there were a lot of logistical issues that
Right.
it just didn't seem that would be a viable option at this point.
Correct.
We also discussed creative ideas for the future. Basically, what came out of that was they don't really get the funding to make any upgrades to polling locations. They have on occasion received some grant funding, but the most they've ever received in one year was $15,000, which I believe is significantly less than what it would cost for any of our,
Correct.
and that's for the whole county. So if that's something that we're going to want to look into in the future, we're going to need to find some local, somebody to partner with to look at that. So this will be an ongoing problem.
What was optimistic is what we hadn't thought of is they mentioned other places like senior centers or apartment complexes, things like that. So I'm trying to think what's in that ward, if anything, because we really only did was just go after churches. And I talked to him again about the construction that would be needed in order to bring it up to ADA. And the one gentleman from the Board of Elections said you're looking at major excavating and tearing up concrete and re-ramping and the whole thing. And it's just not something that not only could we not afford, but we're not allowed
Well,
to
yeah.
afford. So,
It seems like we were in this situation last year. Thank you. So it seems like the solution is not, coming the direction that we want it to come. I mean, they're not going to say, okay, we're not going to be in your buildings because they need the buildings. And it seems like there's no way we can say no. So can we make sure that moving forward, that we do not have school scheduled in those buildings?
yes,
And I remember last year, we kind of punted and, did
Yeah.
something magical. But that, we have this discussion every year.
right.
And if we can just, look at the calendar ahead of time and say, okay, for these particular buildings, you don't
Right.
have school today. And I know this is unusual this year because we haven't been in school, but
Right.
it seems like that. What is the rule that they are using to say, we're in your building
There's a statute.
Here's a copy of the statute I had.
There's
my
a,
notes are on the
there's an
back of it.
Ohio Revised Code section that permits and sort of requires any taxpayer-funded building to be available for their use. Now, it does say buildings or grounds, and it also says so long as it's practicable, I think, or practical.
Practicable or
Um, And the frustrating part here is that statute obviously is years old, and between a pandemic and all of the issues that school districts, public and private, have had to try to secure their grounds, it seems to me that it's not practicable to allow unfettered public access into the buildings. I'm not real comfortable, even if we remove all of the students and staff from the buildings and then open them up, for a whole number of reasons. And not just related to a lot of the violent situations that we have seen. There's a lot of inappropriate things that could get left behind by the public. Recording devices that could be left behind in sensitive places, and I don't think that I think the fight that somebody may eventually have with the Board of Elections is going to be what does as long as it is practicable mean. No one has been willing to fight with them on that.
Right.
I think that at some point it has to be considered whether in this day and age, in this environment, where school districts are spending millions of dollars of taxpayer money to prevent unfettered access to the buildings, to then all of a sudden say, you've got to let whoever in, you can't ID them. And I understand it from a voting perspective, but you can't ID them, you can't they can't run through a metal detector, you can't do anything to prevent somebody from coming in and doing whatever they're going to do.
So it seems like our issue is not really with the Board of Elections, it's with that document.
it's with the
Because the Board of
revised code.
Elections is always going to lean on that and say, look, here's the rule. So it seems like that's what needs to be changed, which is kind of beyond this.
Right, and I mean, we talked a little bit about this with legal counsel, and there is the option of getting school districts together to try to lobby the legislature to change this. Where that may go, I don't know, but that is also a possibility, but a future possibility. It doesn't solve our issue today.
So in the meantime, we need to
Yeah, and
let them in.
Tom, if we were to approve these contracts, what would be the plan?
Different plans at different buildings, but basically anywhere that the public is coming in and out of that'll be stationed by police officers. No access to where the kids would be. They would have access inside of the building to vote, but not into the gym, or not into the hallways, not into the restrooms, no public restrooms, that type of thing. And having enough officers to basically watch people come in and go out. And that's be the same way it is at Kempton's. They're entering a back, escorted down the hallway and into the gymnasium, and there's an officer on the other exits so that nobody can leave there, and then they have to go back out the same way we came in and exit the same way. So, I mean, that's all fine and dandy and good, and I think we'll be okay doing that. It's just certainly not like I agree with Jason 100%. I mean, it's just, it's just you spend $1 million on things like security, and then you just open the door, and it drives me insane.
That's
Well,
kind of
I-
out of our control. Go ahead.
I think in the future, because we have an election coming up next year in '21, and then we have one in '23, in November. So we have got to set down a plan that we either don't have the students in the building or find someplace for them to go.
Agreed. Yeah. We did that earlier this year, and we didn't have the students, and we had staff that were stationed at any of those voting locations were displaced that day to go work in other buildings. Still comes down to the issue of who's been in the buildings, what can they leave, et cetera, even without, so it doesn't solve that, but we did, there are some concerns amongst staff being in the buildings during this, for their safety, security, and those type of things. So we were able to move them this year. In the future, we will make it so that there won't be having that.
It's an unfortunate that we have to have this type of conversation in this day and age, but
Yeah.
that's what society has developed into, and it's unfortunate.
Correct.
Tom, you and I had also talked about school absences that day.
Yes, so, you know, we will have the security plan in place with our officers. I have had to do these situations before with our principals, in which we will put out the word to those parents that say, hey, if you don't feel safe, feel comfortable, your child will not be counted absent. We will make sure that they have work, a lesson to do while they're at home, et cetera. Different buildings, different situations, but we'll make sure that they have some instruction going on, whether that's the old blizzard bags or whatever. But what we don't want to do is punish the parents nor the students for making a decision to keep their child home because of safety reasons. And we'll make sure that that doesn't happen. It's about the best we can do.
Do we still have, at Kimpton, we're still doing half remote, half in the building? Is there any way to combine that? So that Tuesday's a remote day instead of an in-class day?
Yeah, go ahead, you can talk to that. We've done this.
We talked about that, whereas, so typically Wednesday is a
Right,
remote day.
right,
So we talked about switching Tuesday
Right.
to Wednesday. So
And that's what we're gonna do.
Wednesdays,
Okay.
Tuesdays there. Yes.
so the main thing is gonna be at Echo Hills. There's not the.
And
oppor-
Woodland.
And Woodland.
And Woodland, right.
Correct.
So at the two elementaries.
Woodland's a little bit better situation because they come out of the parking lot and straight into the gymnasium, then straight back out.
Right,
Echo, they come in and go, they have to go down one of two hallways. And they're in
Go
a
to the
hallway
gym.
and then go into our gymnasium because
Right.
there is no other entrance
Right.
straight into the gymnasium.
Right.
And it's just, I agree, Jace. I mean,
Yeah.
I agree.
okay.
And I get what Ms. Johnson Bauer says. I get what the statute says. The beef with the Board of Elections is that they've kind of punted to us at every opportunity and said, you know, you guys find the other buildings, you guys find the alternatives, and they could be doing some of that themselves. They could be, you know, whenever they get that funding, earmarking it for addressing these buildings. And this can't just be a Stowe Monroe Falls problem.
It's not. Based on our conversation with them, it's actually a conversation they've had with a lot of school boards.
Yeah.
And that's why the lobbying to change the legislation came up as a consideration on our part.
And I think that's what's going to end up happening.
was-
We're going to need to lobby. I mean,
I'll be honest, I think this conversation that we had with the Board of Elections was probably more fruitful than previous.
Yes.
It was very collegial, it was very, they only have so many resources, unfortunately, and they just don't have the ability to do it, which I think is probably the conversation that should have happened before, rather than, I think maybe in the past it hasn't been as, I don't know, open of a conversation as this was.
and we were able to find two other alternative sites, and that was good. But again, like Jason said, it was us finding. I mean, it's kind of
Yeah.
like, help us out.
But
here.
it's,
Yeah.
Give us
the-
some
It's
ideas.
it's really just been you, because once we discussed it as a board years ago, it was kind of just put on top of your desk.
Correct.
And, you know, and it was, you did good getting us out of those buildings. so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just need to figure out the rest.
I mean, the reality is it's something we want to happen.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
if this is something we want to go forward with,
Yeah.
we just need to put it on our,
I
on
would
our
love
to-do
to
list.
Lead
Yeah.
the way on lobbying something.
All right, are we ready?
Trevor, I don't know if we had a motion to approve these or if we just went right into discussion. Do you recall?
We did.
We went into discussion. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the contracts with the Summit County Board of Education regarding the May 4th, 2021 primary?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay. Roll call.
Johnson Bowers.
Aye.
Brown.
Aye.
Whitaker.
No.
Bedio.
Aye.
Wright.
Aye. Okay. All right, the next item on our agenda is an executive session for the purposes of preparing for, conducting, or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment. Do I have a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, we are in executive session at
Take roll
7,
call.
I'm sorry, roll
Roll call.
call. Skipped right over that.
Yeah. Whitaker.
Aye.
Bedio.
Aye.
Johnson Bowers,
Aye.
Brown,
I,
Wright.
Aye. All right, we are in executive session at 7:20 PM. There will be no action after the executive session.